When we think of national parks, we usually picture the postcards: paved, scenic overlooks, crowded park boardwalks, and families roasting marshmallows. But that curated experience hides a much harsher environment. Most of the infrastructure we rely on, visitor centers, ranger stations, marked trails, occupies a tiny fraction of a percent of the actual land. The rest consists of hundreds of thousands of acres of unmonitored, densely packed wilderness. If you hike just a few miles past those main corridors, you enter what is essentially a vulnerability vacuum. The cell service drops, the crowds disappear. You are abruptly removed from the top of the food chain. People actively seek out this isolation to disconnect, but occasionally, those who push furthest out report running into things that defy a logical explanation. Leaving the marked path means shedding the protective layers of modern society. It forces an active exposure to whatever is waiting in the deep woods. In the summer of 2021, a hiker named Kevin traveled to Washington's Olympic National Park. He specifically asked the visitor center for an unpopular route, intentionally avoiding the crowded coastal areas in search of complete silence. 3 hours into the dense forest, he stopped for lunch near a small clearing. About 100 yards away, another man was standing between the trees. The man didn't return Kevin's wave. He simply watched him, completely motionless. Kevin packed up and kept moving. An hour later, he saw the exact same man standing further down the trail ahead of him. The route was linear. The man would have had to walk directly past Kevin to get there. The man stepped off the path and vanished into the woods. Hurrying forward, Kevin noticed fresh boot prints appearing just inside the tree line. They were running parallel to the path, matching his exact stride. By late afternoon, Kevin reached his planned shelter, an elevated fire lookout tower on a high ridge. With glass walls offering clear views in every direction, it felt incredibly secure. Around midnight, he woke to the sound of heavy boots climbing the exterior metal staircase, one step at a time. The footsteps reached the top landing, then stopped in dead silence. By morning, the landing was empty. The ground below showed muddy tracks circling the tower structure, but not a single footprint leading away. Being stalked miles from civilization means you have nowhere to run. A high-altitude shelter stops being a sanctuary and immediately becomes a cage. That physical dread takes a different shape in Yellowstone National Park. A camper named Rachel and her boyfriend pitched their tent on the edge of a heavily wooded area, far off the main loop. On their second night, Rachel unzipped the tent at 2:30 in the morning. Outside, the heavy cooler, the camping chairs, and their backpacks were silently moved. Nothing was missing. Every item had simply been meticulously rearranged while they slept. Waking her boyfriend, they swept the area with their flashlights. They found no one. Instead, the beams illuminated hundreds of bare human footprints pressed into the dirt. The tracks formed an unbroken perimeter around their campsite. The person had spent hours walking laps in the dark, maintaining a strict 10-foot boundary from the fabric of their tent. They packed up at first light and reported the incident. The park ranger taking their statement grew visibly uncomfortable when they described the bare footprints. He advised them to pack up and leave the campground immediately, confirming that multiple previous campers in that specific area had reported the exact same silent perimeter walking phenomenon. A territorial invasion forces you to confront absolute vulnerability. An unknown entity had complete, uncontested control over the environment, mere inches from their heads, and chose only to watch. In Kentucky's Mammoth Cave National Park, a visitor named Daniel encountered an anomaly that strips away human agency entirely. Exploring an isolated area of the park, he decided to follow a wooden trail marker that wasn't listed on his map. The narrow path guided him to a small, unremarkable cave entrance cut into a hillside. He stepped inside, expecting to find a tunnel system, but the cave went back 20 feet and hit an abrupt dead end. He turned around and walked back out. He had only been inside for a few minutes, but checking his phone, he realized it was suddenly 7 p.m. 6 hours of daylight were entirely gone. He assumed his battery had glitched, but shadows on the hillside had stretched, the sun sat low on the horizon, and the temperature drastically dropped. The environment had shifted to evening. Disoriented, Daniel hurried back toward the main trail. When he looked over his shoulder, the cave entrance was gone. The wooden marker had disappeared. And when he eventually found his way back to the visitor center, The rangers confirmed there was never a trail, a marker, or a cave recorded in that sector. If the terrain and time itself break down, human survival instincts become entirely useless. There is no logic to apply, and nowhere left to navigate. These 3 cases feature no ghosts or supernatural monsters. They are anchored by muddy tracks on a metal staircase, rearranged camp chairs, and missing hours on a digital clock. They leave grounded, physical evidence. This is the price of deep solitude. Pushing past the boundaries of human infrastructure creates fractures in our expected reality, allowing unexplainable phenomena to slip through. The next time you find yourself alone on a trail, miles from the nearest road, pay close attention to the tree line. Listen for the spacing of footsteps behind you, because in the darkest, most isolated pockets of our national parks, true solitude might just be an illusion.